Have you ever thought if God wanted you to be in a relationship, he would bring the man to you? On this episode of Intentional Dating with Sara, I'm going to share with you how I debunked that mindset when I was single and dating and what I did instead to find my husband. Now, this doesn't mean that I didn't have faith. It doesn't mean that I don't believe in God's will, and we will address all of those things on this episode. Share this video if you get value from it, and be sure to grab my free guide, which is linked down below, to give you the 3 essential steps to finding the relationship of your dreams without wasting your time on the wrong men. So let's get to it. I hear these next phrases commonly from women that want to be in a relationship, but they're not actively dating. They'll say things like, if it's meant to be, it will happen. Or if it's God's will, it will happen. I've even heard, I'm not going to do online dating because that would be forcing something that might not be God's will. I understand as Christians, we want to do God's will, and you don't want to get ahead of him. But what happens then is you wait and do nothing. And all the while, you're not dating, you're not meeting people, and you're not taking action. And then what happens is you remain single. These statements and beliefs are actually holding you back, and I'm going to show you how they're not necessarily true. At the end, I'm going to talk about what I did to change this mindset so that I could find my husband. So first, yes, God can bring us what he has for us. There can actually be an all-natural, organic chance encounter. God can work that way. However, that is not always the case, and usually we need to take some sort of action in order to get the things that we want, and even in order to get to the things that are in God's will. Next, a lot of people have this mindset thinking that they're just going to sit on their couch and the man of their dreams is going to ring their doorbell one day. And if that doesn't happen, they then think that it's not God's will for them to be in a relationship. But I want to encourage you to think a little bit here about that mindset. What other situations would that happen in? Let's say you were going to get a job and God had this job for you. It wasn't his will for you to have this job. However, you needed some training for the job. You need to get some type of schooling for the job. Are you just going to sit back and expect somebody to ring your doorbell and say, hey, I have this job for you. Here it is. No, you're not. You're going to go get the training that you need, right? You're going to sign up for the interview. If there's an application process that you can find online or somewhere else, you're going to go fill out the application and you're going to do what you need to do to try to get that job. Even if you believe it might be God's will, and even if it is God's will, you still have to take several actions in order to make that a reality. So he can bring us a chance encounter, but you still have to act on it. So let's say you do meet somebody naturally somewhere. You still have to say hello. You still have to decide, am I going to continue this conversation or not? And you still have to agree to meet the person or to continue talking to them. Let's think about buying a house. Is somebody just going to ring your doorbell one day and they're going to say, here's your dream house, here's the keys, go ahead and move in? No, it's unlikely that's going to happen, right? But we do this when we think about dating. We tell ourselves in our mind that if God doesn't bring somebody to us, it is not God's will. In the situation of buying a house, you probably need to hire a realtor. You probably need to talk to that realtor about what you want in a house. You probably need to go look at some houses. You need to talk to the bank. There are a lot of steps involved and a lot of actions that you can take, even small actions, that will set you up for having a higher likelihood that you'll find the house that you want. I actually have a video on how buying your dream house is a lot like dating, and you'll be able to catch that video that's popping up on your screen here. But I want to keep in mind these 2 things. So buying a house, getting a job. Somebody said to me one time, well, those 2 things are necessities. So of course God would want us to have those 2 things, right? We need a place to live. We need a job. So yes, those would be in God's will. And so it's okay to take those actions. Okay, well then let's use something that is not a necessity. So let's talk about going on a vacation. So if we have the mindset of, if it's God's will, it'll just happen. Or if it's God's will, he'll bring me this man. Let's apply that to a vacation. If it's God's will, is somebody going to just give you the vacation? Is somebody going to show up in your life and they're going to say, hey, I know where you want to go. I've already saved all this money for you. I've booked the tickets. Here's your vacation. Go enjoy it. Likely that's not going to happen. It is the same thing. In order to go on that vacation, you probably needed to take some actions. You needed to save some money. You needed to dream a little bit and decide, what do I want? Where do I want to go on vacation? You needed to look at places to stay. You needed to look at what there is around there for food and activities and things like that. You had to take little actions in order to make that a reality. So is it God's will for you to go on that vacation? Maybe, but did you have to do some things to get there? Yes, you did. The point is, it's not wrong for you to book the vacation, for you to plan it, for you to dream about it, for you to take the necessary steps to make it happen. And it's not wrong for you to buy a house. You need a house, right? Sometimes we buy a house because it's the house we want to buy. It's not wrong for you to meet with the realtor to make that happen. And maybe God does have this dream job available for you, but you're going to have to do some work to get it. So let's look at some situations in the Bible and let's apply this same mindset. Usually in the Bible, if it was God's will for something to happen, it didn't just automatically happen. Now we know that God provided many miracles for people. We know that Jesus performed many miracles, but oftentimes there is some actions needed to be taken by God's people in order for these things to happen, in order for God's will to go on. So let's think of Noah and the flood. God didn't just say, hey, Noah, I'm going to shut you up in your house. The rains are going to start to come and you're safe in the flood. He didn't do that. Noah had to act out of obedience. He had to have the faith to take action day after day after day after day. And Noah had to believe God, and he had to get ready for what he thought God had in store for him. It was certainly God's will for Peter to aid in building the church, but Peter had to stand up and start preaching. He had to take those actions to get God's will done. And then let's think about Joshua and the walls of Jericho. Joshua didn't just sit back and God said, here, Joshua, here's the keys to the city, go on in. No, Joshua had to act in obedience. He had to have faith that God knew what he was doing, and he also had to take action. And in that story, it was kind of an odd type of action that he had to take, but all of that accomplished God's will in his life. And then Ruth, of course. I love the story of Ruth in the Bible. In fact, I did a whole video breaking down what you as a single woman, or even if you're divorced, can look for in the book of Ruth that can guide you as you are dating. But God didn't say to Ruth, hey, I'm just going to bring you Boaz one day. He didn't do that. Ruth had to take action. She had to go to the fields. She had to do some work. She had to put herself out there, and she had to take some risks. And in the end, those things paid off. And she wound up being able to meet Boaz and to be being redeemed by him. And so for me, I wanted to be in a good relationship, and I hoped that that was God's will. And so I did what I could to try to make that happen. I went on dates. I point blank one time asked somebody if they wanted to hang out, and I got rejected right to my face, but that was okay. I got myself back up and I continued to move on. I continued to put myself out there. I signed up for online dating, and over time, I learned how to make it work for me so that it was easy and not overwhelming and not stressful. And I wound up meeting my husband. Now, that doesn't mean that you need to do online dating, but I will tell you in my story, it was unlikely I was going to meet my husband organically because we lived an hour apart. We didn't really go in the same circles or the same places. And so I closed that gap by signing up for online dating, and that's how I actually met him. And so the point is, even in my story, I had to take action to be able to get the relationship that I wholeheartedly believe is God's will for me. So remember, God may bring you your man out of the blue. He may do that. Maybe that's God's will that you are going to meet him organically somewhere. It's highly doubtful that he's going to show up at your house, right? But you have to take some sort of action regardless of how you meet him. And if you're just waiting for him to fall in your lap, if you're just waiting for him to bump into you at the grocery store, maybe that is not the best thing for you to do. Maybe you need to do something else that would increase the chances that you would meet him. So you can watch my video on where and how to meet people. You can sign up for online dating. You can attend some local events. You can also just start making yourself available to the people that you see naturally around you. And remember, it may be God's will for you to be in a great relationship one day, but you might have to take some action to get there. Be sure to grab my free guide, which is linked in the video down below. It will teach you the 3 essential steps to finding the man of your dreams without wasting your time, energy, or emotions on the wrong men. Subscribe to my channel and share this video. I'll see you next time.